have a question. Is trust the real casualty of AI? We all got involved in using Zoom during the COVID era when we were told to stay home by our meddlesome government and gave in. And then you suddenly found out the people's backgrounds weren't even real. I've had people ask me if this is a real stove, and yes, this is a real Philco. It's probably worth more than my whole office building. And yes, that's a real corn and coffee pot. And somehow you're surprised that it's real. But when I tell you this is a real stove, the first thing you want to do is, oh, I want to see it. I want to touch it. Does it work? Can you cook something on it? Can I have it? Can I have it? Because you feel connected to real things. The problem with AI is not that it's inherently bad. I use it too. It's definitely a tool that can be helpful because, frankly, I get very wordy sometimes, and I have asked AI to condense my sentences. However, they're my sentences. And so when you let the tool be the helper, it doesn't have to erode the business you're building or the trust that you should be building in all your relationships all the time. And as AI takes a bigger and bigger place in everything and becomes more and more useful, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we're trading convenience for authenticity. Because no matter how many times you put in the little resume or give it a video that you've done in the past, give it information about you, it's not you. And aren't you glad for that? Because in a world where everything can be uploaded, we turn into that terrible Black Mirror, not Black Mirror, what was that episode? Is it on the Amazon, that upload show where people uploaded themselves into the cloud so they could be saved forever and nothing was real? And it was very creepy, frankly, and I don't really like creepy television shows. But we have to start asking ourselves what the trade-off is. And frankly, I don't think I'm interchangeable with anybody else. Do you? Because if you think you're interchangeable, then, honey, you ought to turn all this off and go for a long walk outside, touch some grass, and make some friends. Because the more interesting you are and the less interchangeable you are, you're going to find out people start leaning in. Just like you want to lean in to a classic Philco stove. So as I'm thinking about the possibilities of AI and as I learn about it for my own business, I'm also watching where it is becoming more and more intrusive. And music is something that is so intently personal to me. That's what I'd like to share with you and have you think about with me, because music eats my heart all to pieces and like crushes it. And I have all these memories that come in when I listen to a song from the 80s. When I hear the first chords of Hungry Like the Wolf, I am right back there hanging Tiger Beat on my wall because, yes, I had a crush on Simon Le Bon. I don't know who y'all liked in Duran Duran, but that was my guy. Simon, if you happen to watch this, hey, what's up? I'm married now, but you're still cute. And when you start realizing there was an emotional response to it, the emotion comes from you reacting to somebody else's creativity. And Duran Duran is a band of real humans who wrote real songs, wrote the lyrics, wrote the music from a place where they were, and then they transported me with their music into a different place. And then I can look back at the music of the ages. Oh my goodness. If I hear the Messiah, I immediately think Christmas or Easter because, you know, the whole Messiah is the full story of Jesus, but often we just listen to the Hallelujah chorus, and you might not even know that Worthy is the Lamb is one of the biggest musical things ever created, and Handel was expressing this faith and this life and the feelings, the raw feelings and the raw emotions, and then you look hundreds of years later, and I'm still getting goosebumps thinking about the music. Now, I could plug in the Bible to AI and say, make me a song, and it's going to make a song that goes like this, 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 and goes like this. And if you know, you know, because it's going to give us what it thinks we're supposed to want instead of a human delivering humanity through music. How about through writing? When you want to say something that's really powerful, you, of course, can have editors. When I was the editor of the school newspaper back in the 8th grade, thank you, Mrs. Jewett, for that job. I loved it so much. And She had me editing something else, but maybe she remembers because I absolutely don't. But my fingers were always purple from the mimeograph machine. And when we were editing, it was somebody else's thoughts that we would create a space for in that publication. And then you might have to trim it by a sentence or two or make a correction to the grammar here or there. But that was not changing the original intent, which came from somebody else's mind and from their viewpoint and from their heart. None of it was created by a machine based on what somebody told that machine to say. And so I'm looking at what we had and then what we have now, and I have to look at the news coming out around these millions of Jeffrey Epstein emails. And if y'all noticed, it was without 25 seconds after that stuff got released that there were AI versions cropping up. There were people creating something using the tools that was not real. And so trust in the whole information piece gets further diminished than it already was. And we're not going to go down that rabbit hole because I don't even know what to think at this point, except that we are ruled by absolutely degenerate elites and the very few good people up there. I don't know how y'all are hanging in, but I wish you the full armor of God. And so when you start thinking that slop goes out there and the world just consumes it. Well, if you're consuming slop, you're outsourcing your judgment. So let me just ask you this. What's worth hanging on to? Your judgment, your brain, your unique ability not to be interchangeable? Or is it more important to save 5 minutes and let somebody else think for you? And you know the answer. And I'm not saying that AI is something that must be banished from the earth. I'm pretty sure it's already infiltrated in so far that we're going to have to figure out how to manage what's out there. But I am saying that you're going to have to be on your A game to preserve this and to preserve this so that you can continue to live in the calling that you are uniquely designed for. And if you don't know your calling yet, well, you might even ask Chat GPT or Perplexity or whichever of the programs you use, hey, look at my resume and give me some ideas, because I have seen that floating around on the LinkedIn that people are looking for career paths through Chat GPT. Well, what we used to do was talk to career counselors at the high school or at the college, or frankly, just the old fella at the church that you felt was the man of wisdom, or the lady who always had the best casserole in her 9x13 because she would dish out so much wisdom along with that food. So what happens if you start talking to humans again? And I mean, with your own words and with your own creativity so that you can hear and absorb and then make your own judgment, because you can't outsource a conversation that comes from another human being. When we're talking about a world that is moving so fast, you start realizing that your slow behaviors could absolutely be what sets you apart and what allows you to create an entirely different future. And you're the one that will own that future because it's just you. In fact, I have this conversation with myself about music all the time, because when I saw that the AI generated artist and song had hit #1 on Spotify, I cut it off, because I'd rather listen to my records and my cassette tapes, because I know that that's real, and not just because it's tangible, because I was there at the time. And I guess if you are a young Generation Alpha person who's happened across this Mama's podcast, well, hello, young folks. I don't know why you're here, but welcome. But if you've stumbled across it, you've heard some of our music from the 80s and the 70s and the 90s, and you've probably liked it very well because it felt unique. And you could tell there was an artist behind it. In fact, there were so many times that a favorite song of the 80s was a remake. What's the Bangles song, The Hazy Shade of Winter? Well, that was a remake, but we did not realize that as young people in the 80s. We thought that was our song. And as I got older and heard the older version, I'm thinking, well, our version was better. But it wasn't generated. It was a new version. It was recreated. So what if you start looking at AI as a way to allow you to change your message up a little bit, or take it as a starting point and create your own framework so that it's not the message, you still are. AI's got to be your tool, but you are still the message. You are still the product. And that's why if you start to guard these spaces and create guardrails around all the technology around you, trust doesn't have to be a casualty. Because I will tell you, the more AI I see people spit out, my trust of them starts to diminish because I wonder what their reality actually is. Am I hearing their heart? Am I hearing them pour themselves out? When I look at the church service of today, I've encountered multiple churches that are using AI in their services, whether it's to design a prayer for the congregation and it looks good on paper, or it's to design a piece of music and say this was designed by AI, and it seems okay on the surface, but there's no humanity in it. And when I hear humanity in the church, I'm hearing a pouring out of the soul, of anguish, of emptying yourself before God, of this instant when you just have to be raw. There's nothing raw about AI. Nothing. It is sanitized. And y'all, life can't be sanitized. I mean, who do you trust more? Do you trust the perfect person more, or do you trust the person who's a hot mess? You might worry about that hot mess person. You might not want to have to call them on the phone because it'll take an hour, but you can trust them. Like, you know what? I see the space you're in, friend, and I'm going to pray for you. And I hope that you actually do that when you say you're going to do it. Because when you're seeing somebody for who they are, it really should draw you to them. Now, it could also repel you from them. You might say, I can't, not in my space. And if you know your personality because you've taken the Myers